Awareness is the key to healing. You cannot heal something that you do not know exists. You cannot heal something that you are in denial of. And so the first step in healing and mastering the self, the higher self, is in awareness. And it's not just in having awareness, it's in becoming the awareness, becoming the observer. The observer is neutral, just like the higher self is neutral. It does not have a specific preference, right? Preferences are always egoic. The higher self has no preferences because it knows that all things are working together for good, and it knows that all data is useful data. So it doesn't push away experiences or cling to others. It simply observes and appreciates what it has learned or what it is learning. That is higher self-mastery. To release your investment in the outcome and to understand that the soul seeks to experience here in this realm of duality. And so there is no right or wrong. And a lot of people don't like that. They because we live in this world of dichotomy and extreme polarity, we think that there's right and there is wrong, even in spirituality. But when we are in a state of neutrality, we understand that everything is medicine. Everything serves its purpose. It's not just the light that is valuable. We honor and we respect the darkness because the darkness has its place. The darkness is also a teacher. So just the same way when it comes to karmic relationships or karmic seasons or karmic lessons, karmic phases in your life, karma is not this negative punishment in a sense. Karma is simply experiencing the natural consequences of things that happen, right? And so if I behave this way, or if I do this, or if I do this to another, this is the natural consequence of that experience. And it is the way that we learn. And so when it comes to higher self-mastery, letting go of preferences, becoming the observer, and staying in this neutral space is key. And so, for example, let's say that you are very triggered. Okay, and we've gone over triggers, we've gone over fears, we've gone over inner child healing, and all of that is very important. But don't get stuck in the healing phase. Because you have to remember that the one that is healing is the not self. What is the not self? The not self is not the higher self, the true self, the spirit. The not self is the conditioned self. It is the programmed self. It is the personality self. It is a mental construct of beliefs and memory and temperament. It is not the true self, the authentic self, the higher self. It is the not self. So yes, it's important, and this is the great paradox, that we always will come to. Because in truth, as long as we're in this realm, every spiritual truth will lead you to a paradox. Because who's healing? The not self. The person that you are not. It's the person that you became because of the matrix, because of conditioning, because of programming, because of experiences, because of the dysfunction you inherited, because of culture, because of society, because of religious beliefs, because of all of these external things, right? And so at the end of the day, you're healing the not self. And that's useful. But it's also useful to remember that that's not who you really are. And that's the paradox, right? And this is also referred to in spiritual teachings as the direct path to God. And what that is yes, you can pray. Yes, you could meditate. Yes, you can do yoga. Yes, you can do inner child healing. You can do all of these things. Drink ayahuasca, all of it. And I've done it all. And it's all very important. It has all gotten me to where I am now, to this awareness, to this theme of consciousness, to this level of understanding. But who is the one meditating? Who is the one sitting in the therapy room? Is it your true, authentic self, your higher self? Or is it the not self? Is it the conditioned self? Is it the personality? Right? And so eventually that has to run its course, because eventually you have to say, oh, but that's not who I really am. And so the direct path to God is not constantly the path of self-improvement. The direct path to God is the awareness of who you really are. And when you have this awareness of who you really are, you naturally will feel this reverence and this sense of sanctity, this sense of holiness. And that's not arrogance, that's remembrance. You're remembering who you are. When you begin to feel the sense of holiness and sacredness, and you know who you are, you have this same respect for all beings because you know who they really are. And you have this same respect for life itself and the Creator that created it all. And that sense of devotion, that sense of immense gratitude and appreciation for all of it, that is the direct path to God. The more that you can tap into that space, and I invite you to try it now. Just for a second, feel your wholeness. Take a deep breath and feel your wholeness. Feel your holiness. Feel your sacredness. Feel your divinity. Feel the part of you that is totally neutral, that lacks nothing, that has never been damaged by anything of this world, because it is not of this world. It is eternal. Feel into that eternal nature, beyond duality, to the space of non-duality, to the space of perfect wholeness. That's the direct path to God. And so one of the exercises that you can do to start strengthening this perception or this awareness of yourself as this higher self is simply tapping into that space. What we just did, try to do it once a day, twice a day. When you get in the car to drive to work, or when you get out of work and you're sitting in the car, just for a moment, give yourself 10 seconds and tap into your wholeness. And feel what it feels like to have everything that you need. Feel what it feels like to already be everything that you want to be. To already have it all. To need nothing from no one. Feel that wholeness. That is mastery. When you can get to that space all throughout the day, to the point that you are that space, you become that space, you live in that space, that's mastery. You're no longer identifying with the character that you're playing. You have almost like a love affair with the character that you're playing. It's like, I love Erica so much, it makes me want to cry. I think she's so beautiful. I don't mean physically, I mean inside. She tries so hard, and she has such a loving heart, and she's been through so much, and I appreciate her so much. I see her as a dear loved one, as my sister, a dear loved one who has taught me many things. This is awakening. This is mastery. When you have this deep appreciation for yourself, for the not self, for the themes of consciousness that you're in, for all the trauma, for all the experiences, for all the karma, for all the love, for all the beauty, for every master teacher in your life, showing you the way back home to wholeness, to yourself. This is when we begin to remember who we really are. And although the healing path is very important and it has its place, and I'm not telling you to do a spiritual bypass. I'm not telling you, oh, well, I'm not really Erica, so it doesn't matter what issues she has. If you are experiencing any form of suffering, then you need to continue healing. Until there is no more suffering, until you get to a place of peace. And that doesn't mean you're not going to dip back down into suffering sometimes. That doesn't mean you're not going to dip back down into lower levels of consciousness. You may no longer be in shame or grief or fear. You may be in a space or a level of consciousness that is baseline willingness or baseline courage or baseline understanding. Baseline. Right? But you're always going to dip back down because that's part of the human experience. The important thing is to see all of it as a gift, not as it happening to you. And I know that's so cliche, but it's the truth. It's all happening for you. So it's important to not make everything so life and death, but to appreciate where you are in your journey and to know that exactly where you are is perfect. There is no right and there is no wrong. But when you start getting too tied up to the character that you're playing, you're too invested in the character that you're playing, the suffering is too intense. Here's the cheat code. Become the observer. Observe the one who is suffering. Observe the one who is mourning. Observe the one who is afraid. I call this the drone perspective. So sometimes, this is another exercise I'll share with you. It's very effective. Sometimes when I'm feeling very emotional, I'm in this emotional state. Let's say I'm distraught. Let's say I'm anxious. Let's say I'm I'm feeling guilty, I'm feeling worried, I'm feeling afraid. Let's say I'm driving to drop my son off at school. I'll separate myself for a moment. And I will have this drone vision. So I picture this like drone hovering over me. And this drone is my consciousness, is the higher self, is the true self. And so I just observe Erica driving her son to school. And I say, what's going on with Erica? And you get the information. Well, Erica's feeling really stressed out right now because she's worrying about X, Y, and Z, and she thinks that X, Y, and Z is going to happen, and she's having these thoughts. Because sometimes we're so identified with the character and with the story and with our perception that there's no space between to even discern. It's like we're so identified that we believe every thought we have, every emotion we have, the story we're telling, when all of that is subjective. None of that is really real. And so it gives you this immense superpower to really discern and to observe what is happening and what the solution is. Okay? So becoming the observer, this is the medicine, and this is the spiritual awakening. The way that I describe a spiritual awakening is this spaciousness. It's like the beginning of an awakening is when you start to question things and you start to notice. It's like, I like to use the analogy of being at a bar and you're sober, but everyone around you is drunk. It's like everyone around you is unaware, is not conscious, but you are sober and aware and conscious. That's the beginning of the awakening. That's what it's like. It's like you kind of start to notice, like, oh my God, everyone drank the Kool-Aid. Like, everyone is just working their job and fixated on their body and, wanting fame or wanting riches or wanting physical beauty or whatever it is, and, wanting the promotion or wanting more money and just stuck in this survival and pleasure-seeking state, but no one is really aware of the program or the matrix or like what we've been fed, like the things that have been so normalized in our culture. It's like none of it is even questioned. And so it's like you start to question things and you start to become aware of the impact of the things that you're listening to and the things that you're watching and the things that you grew up believing and that your parents believed. And you just start noticing dysfunction and you just start noticing distortions and you start questioning. And this is the beginning of the journey. And then eventually there's this spaciousness where you can observe yourself in conversation. You can observe your thinking mind. You don't believe every thought you have. This spaciousness is the awakening. And it's really the space for transformation. The more that you can connect to that spaciousness, that is the beginning of the expansion of your consciousness. Expansion is spaciousness. Spaciousness is this space of non-duality. It's not attaching to a preference. It's having a deep respect and honor for all of it. And it's like in the spiritual awakening, in the spiritual journey, sometimes we start to, like different, spiritual communities and circles and stuff, like start to make comments like, oh, the people that are unawakened or the sleepers and things like that. And it's like, that's just another form of the ego trying to see itself as supreme. It's like, that's not spiritual. When you're really when you're really awakened, it's like you have so much compassion for where people are. And you know that you were there too. And you know how much suffering that state of consciousness creates. So your heart is just so open. And you just have so much compassion and understanding for everyone. And you honor their journey. You know that you are no one to assume what is right or what is wrong for anyone. What's the best path for anyone? Because you know not what that soul is trying to do. What karma it's trying to clear. What it's trying to understand. What it's trying to transmute. What it's trying to transcend within the collective. And so you just have such respect for every brave soul who has chosen to walk this path of duality on this planet. Every single soul, 8 billion souls on this planet are light. They are angels in disguise. They are spirit. And so this is another key point of higher self-mastery, of spiritual awakening. It's stepping away from judgment. And really the antidote to judgment is humility. I want you to say that word, humility, humility. And really feel that word. Anytime that you're judging, anytime that you're judging yourself, anytime that you're worried about your self-image, how you're going to be perceived, whether or not you're good enough, whether or not someone else is good enough, humility. Humility, it like shocks you right back into spirituality because it just reminds you of the truth. You know, it's really the antidote to ego, to separation, to lack. Humility. So, humility, becoming the observer. When you are feeling overwhelmed, when you are feeling afraid, anxious, depressed, ask yourself, who is the one who is depressed? Who is the one that is anxious? Who is the one that is afraid? And boom. Who's the one asking the question? And who are you? That's your power. That's what you have the power to decide. And that's what takes us from 3D consciousness to 4D consciousness. Having the courage to take accountability. Having the courage to say, well, is this true? Is this story serving me? I can choose to no longer identify with this. And that's why subpersonality work is so important, and I teach it so much, because what subpersonality does is it gives you a permission slip to stop identifying with the not self and all the distortions that stemmed from the traumatic experiences and the programming and conditioning that took place. None of it is true. It's all distorted. And so really, it's just the permission slip to stop identifying with lies, with distortions. Anytime you don't feel good, it's because you are believing something that's not true. If you don't feel good about any particular situation, that say your son is, or your daughter is not behaving, or you feel they're going off track, and that's making you feel worried or anxious. Well, you have a belief that you know what's best for your child. You have a belief that your child should be doing what you say to do. And that's distorted because your child is a soul, a sacred soul walking their own sacred path. And you know not what is best for the evolution of that specific soul. humility, trust, and honor the path that that soul has chosen to walk, you can do your best to guide. You can do your best to show unconditional love, grace, mercy, compassion. You can do your best in those areas, but at the end of the day, love is free. At the end of the day, love does not control. Love does not demand. Love does not expect. It sets free. And that's the truth. And can you feel the difference in that? As I'm saying that, can you feel yourself expand? And that's another thing to notice. If you want to know what's true or not true, all you have to do is notice if you're expanding or if you're contracting. Even when you're making a decision, if you're about to make a decision and you feel yourself contracting, quite literally, physically, it's like, oh, you're getting tighter, that's the wrong decision. Not that there's any right or wrong, but just in that moment, having the discernment to understand this is not the highest path for me at this moment. You have to start noticing to what's making you expand. And you use that as a point of reference. You know, we've been conditioned to stop listening to ourselves, to our intuition and higher self and spirit. It's all the same thing. The observer, it's all the same thing. It's different terminology for the same thing. Most of us say, oh, I don't know how to hear the voice of God. I don't know how to hear spirit, hear the higher self. Because you don't know how to hear your intuition. It's all the same thing. It's higher mind, higher information that goes beyond time and space. And if you want to learn how to hear that voice, and I'll do an episode on that, learning how to hear that voice, you have to pay attention to your expansion, to what makes you expand and what makes you contract. So as I was saying that about honoring the path that soul has chosen to walk in this situation with the son or the daughter, didn't you feel the expansion? But when I say words like control, fear, punishment, judgment, lack, what do you feel? Contraction. And what is that parent trying to do? They're trying to control. They're judging the situation, right? They're maybe instilling punishment. Maybe they're in a state of fear, contraction. But when you say allow, honor the path, guide lovingly, let go, understand, what do you feel? You feel expansion. And that is your compass. That's your inner compass. Just start to feel into that. Because what emotions really are, it's besides it being a check engine light, right? When we're feeling these lower themes of suffering, it's also communication. Think about before we had language. I mean, it's amazing. It's mind-blowing to know how many languages there are. Like right now, te puedo empezar a hablar español. It's like, what? It's like we understand these different languages, right? And it's just mind-blowing to me when you think about it. But all the languages that we have and this ability to communicate, for me to pronounce these vowels and, you know, I mean, it's crazy that you can understand what I'm saying. Well, before we had the ability to communicate with language, how do you think we communicated? You might just be listening to me, but if you're watching me right now, what do you think I'm saying like this? What do you think I'm saying like this? What do you think I'm saying like this? Right? It's like, oh, your facial expressions, which are connected to your emotions, is the way that we communicate it. You can see the emotion of disgust. You can see the emotion of happiness. You can see the emotion of fear. You can see the emotion of anger. You understand each other through emotion. And that is even more significant than language. This is why body language is so important. Because you can be saying one thing, but I can say, yeah, I love you so much. But if my face is showing a different emotion, you're not going to believe me. So emotion is communication. That's all that it is. Like, seriously, if you can wrap your mind around this, emotion is communication. It's simply the way that the self is trying to communicate something to you. And I think in the next episode, we're going to go really deep into emotions. And I'm going to, especially if you're an empath, a highly sensitive, or you tend to go through these emotions, this emotion up and down, like these waves of emotions, it's because you have an emotion, you're an emotional person. It's a strength for you. But if you don't understand emotions and you don't understand how to communicate with them and how to understand them, then most likely you'll be a wreck, like I was for like all of my 20s. So when you can start to understand that it's just communication, then you don't get lost in the analytics and in the philosophy and in the intellectualizing, because that somehow, it's like, it's true, they say paralysis by analysis. It's like, it's too much. If you can simplify and you can pay attention to the way you're feeling and just notice the expansion, which is love, love expands, or the contraction, which is fear, love contracts. If right now someone were to attack you, you would contract, you would get tight. But if right now you were to make love to someone that you really loved, you would soften, you would open, right? Expand. And so start to pay attention to that. Let that guide you. That's your intuition. And become the observer. Become aware of your awareness. Start creating more spaciousness within yourself. Don't be wound up so tight. Everything has to be like this. Everyone around me has to be like this. This is the only way I'm going to be happy. This is the only way I can feel peace. No. Come into this space of neutrality. Loosen up your expectations and your judgments. Connect to your humility and let your humility lead the way. This is the way of mastery. I hope that this episode was beneficial for you. If it was, I hope that you share it with a friend. Also, I'm very excited to announce that Higher Self Mastery, the monthly group coaching program, is now open. Very affordable, and it's a wonderful way to continue this work together. We'll have group coaching sessions, we'll have Q&A sessions, and I'll teach a monthly mastery class on subjects like this: themes of consciousness, healing, inner child healing, trauma work, as well as creating a new identity, creating our dream life. So if you feel called, if mastery is calling you, I invite you from my heart to come and spend some time with us inside of Mastery. You can click the link below for more information.